Yeah,
Awesome.
I look forward to hearing that.
Awesome. Let's get into ours now. First thing I want to ask you is, thinking back, if you can go back in time and tell 5-year-old Collin that he'd be a pro football player, what would he say?
Oh, dude, I'd say you're absolutely insane. That was the furthest from my mind back then. I mean, I remember being that age. Now my niece and nephews are growing up. My niece she just turned 6. My nephew just turned 10. And so like, I'm trying to remember like where I was when I was that age, you know what I mean? And it's like, all I wanted to do was run around and throw a football. Unless it was baseball season, I want to throw a baseball. Unless it was basketball season, I wanted to shoot a basketball.
Yeah.
If it was the summer, I wanted to swim. If it was the winter, I wanted to stay inside in my basement with my dad and throw the football around. It was just, I was just trying to do so many things. And I had such a incredible support system with my family and my sister being who she is. And, my parents being so supportive. If you would have told me that, I would have said, I would have imagined that I would do something in sports, but getting paid to play a sport would have been the most insane thing you could have ever told me. And then now I can sit here and reflect on a 9-year professional football career, which I still think I had no business being a part of. I just got the opportunity and I ran with it and had some success and got another opportunity. And, if it weren't for my family that I mentioned and in the sports system, there's no way I would have been, sitting here even talking to you. Yeah. So blessed for the opportunity. And that would have been crazy if somebody told me that, but anything can happen. Really,
exactly.
Anything can happen. You just put your mind to it, and you can go get it. So that was kind of my thing for a long time, and here I am.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the support system, because for a lot of athletes that I talk to, I ask them, what's the one piece of advice you give younger athletes, like as it comes to the mental side of the game, in order to make that next step to be a pro? And 99% of them say have a strong supporting cast of friends and family, because you're going to need that to get through your sports career.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with that more. There's always coaches that come up, but coaches change every year. There's always teammates that come up who are great to have on your side, but they almost change every year. I think about when I had to make the hardest decisions about what I wanted to do with my football career, what I wanted to do even as far as playing football in college. And even when I got to college, having to make some decisions, that I wouldn't have been able to make on my own. The first call I made was to my sister. Next call I made was to my parents. And if it wasn't for them, I don't, who knows what I would have been doing. But yeah, I can't agree with that more. I mean, just getting good, strong mentors, getting strong people around you is super important. When you're young, all the way up until you're at the top of your game, whatever your game is, whether it be business or whether it be, cooking or whether it be being a teacher. I think it is always good to have good mentors kind of helping you along the way.
Yeah, you mentioned college. Let's talk about that for a bit, because I know you walked on in Indiana, and that's I got to imagine that's a pretty gutsy decision to make. Not every person in the world really has the guts to make that decision, right? Because you're really putting yourself up there and dealing with a lot of judgment, failure, perhaps. Yeah. It's a risk you're taking, right? It's a very uncertain situation. So just walk me through a bit about your mindset leading up to walking on in Indiana.
Yeah, so my love for Indiana sports started young. My grandfather played tennis at Indiana, and then my sister, who I had mentioned, I looked up to my entire life, ended up going to. She was on the track team there at Indiana. So my kind of early high school, late junior high life, I was going to Bloomington all the time, and so I had like a kind of a deep rooted love for the city, and for the Crimson and Cream, and it was something that. Early on playing high school football, I said, I'm going to go to Indiana to play football. But I was, freshman year, I was probably 5'4". I remember I wasn't triple digits in weight until I was a sophomore. So I was, 99 pounds as a freshman. And I was telling people like, I'm going to go to Indiana to play football. And it just sounded so ridiculous because you just look at me or you look at pictures of me, back then. And then sophomore year, same thing. I said it. Junior year, same thing. I said it. Senior year, I was saying it. And I remember I said it actually before our senior year. We had a kind of a team meeting, and I mentioned it, and people just laughed. And I remember thinking, like, I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to show you that I can do it. But I didn't have anybody from Indiana coming out to see me. I didn't have anybody from any other schools calling me. I put together a pretty good senior year at a high school just north of Indianapolis, in Carmel High School, and had a good year, top 10 in receiving. all those categories, but nobody was reaching out and wanted me to play for them. And back at this time, you would basically, record on VHS your highlights, and you'd have to send them snail mail, right? Which I remember, writing hours and hours, writing these handwritten notes to these coaches and sending this VHS tape, and I was probably 5'10", 160 pounds. I'm saying I'm 6'1", 185 pounds,
yeah.
And all these things. And so I actually end up hearing back from them, and I get a call and I get invited to a walk-on tryout. And I thought it would just be a couple of us. And I got there, and it was the first week of school, and there were 99 other guys trying out for these. They said they had 5 spots. But for some reason, I think I told so many people that I was going to do it that I never once was concerned about not making the team, right? It was just, I had convinced myself I was going to make it. When I got there, I was convinced that they were looking at, that the players on the team were looking at a player who'd already made the team, who'd been in training camp with them, who was going to be there week 1 on the field with them, which, again, I had no business thinking. I had just convinced myself that this is what I was going to do. So ended up making the team as a walk-on. Again, they picked 5 of us out of 99. And after I made the team, every day from there on out, I told myself they could cut me at any day for any reason. And it's true. When you look at it, like they didn't put any money into me. They didn't, I was a double number. So it's not even like they had dedicated a number to me.
Right.
Everything I got had a line under it. That meant I was a duplicate version of this other number. And I just kept that in the back of my mind every time I had a decision to make, which ultimately ended up not being a decision, right? Whether it was, all right, go to bed early, get some sleep, and go work out in the morning, or go out with my buddies, and at the time, the number 1 party school in the country. It wasn't a decision. I had already made up my mind. I was going to go to bed earlier, and I was going to go, wake up and go train, and I was going to be the best player because at any point they could have cut me. And I went through some really hard times. I feel like I had a lot of players who had scholarships who played in front of me because they had invested money into it. I had coaches tell me, I'll never play. Even once I made the team, I had coaches tell me, you're not big enough, you're not strong enough, you're not fast enough. But I was just so obsessed with proving these people wrong. Even the people I told back in high school that, I'm going to go to Indiana, I'm going to play football. I was so obsessed with proving them wrong and showing them that I could do it that I never had another choice but do that. And so I got on the field pretty early, we'll say as a sophomore, just doing special teams. But it wasn't exactly what I wanted. I wanted to play receiver. I wanted to catch touchdowns. Every day I would put more work in. Every day people started to kind of see what I was doing and what I was about, and that I had that goal and I was going to do anything I had to do until I got that. I reached those goals, and it was, early mornings, late nights. It was, I missed out on a lot of events because this is what I wanted. I didn't want that regular college, like run-of-the-mill college life, which was awesome, which I had a lot of friends doing, but I just wanted a little more than that. And still to this day, August 30th, 2009 was the day that the head coach, Bill Lynch at the time, had come up to me and told me that I had worked hard enough to earn a scholarship to get paid to play football at a Division I school, which was, again, another thing. If you would have told me when I was 5, I would have said you were crazy. And it still chokes me up thinking about it because I had never worked so hard for something to get, and on that day I got to call my mom. I got to tell her and my dad that they didn't have to pay for school anymore, which was one of, the greatest feelings ever. And outside of, and I still say, outside of my 2 nephews being born and my niece being born, that was the best day of my life, just to kind of sit back and realize that everything that I've wanted that I got. And I went out and I ended up playing safety. And I had some success at safety, and which ultimately led to my, career in the Arena Football League, where I played both offense and defense, and kind of the rest was history after that. But I have so much respect for everybody who, like you said, just puts themselves out there and just and decides that it doesn't matter what everybody says. It doesn't matter that they're not getting paid. It doesn't matter that, maybe they're on the roster because it helps the GPA, all those things like that you hear. We do everything and go above and beyond that everything that scholarship players have to do. And so I just have so much respect for walk-ons, and that I wouldn't have done it any other way. If I could go back and be on scholarship from my junior year in high school, I wouldn't have changed it. So I'm just blessed for the opportunity. I still thank Coach every day for that. And, I'm just so happy that my family was supportive to get me to that point where I was able to, tell them that they no longer had to pay for school.
Yeah. There's lots to unpack there, but the big thing that stuck out to me was how you said that you wouldn't trade that experience in for anything. And I really like to stress with people that as athletes, those kind of personal sacrifices or adversities that you go through early on in your career, that's what shapes you for the rest of your athletic career and life in general. You having to grind day in and day out harder than any other scholarship offer student or any other athlete that was 4 or 5 star recruit, you having to grind day in, day out, knowing that any day could be kind of your last day there. That's what kind of shaped you and your mentality to be able to have the successful pro career that you did have.
Yeah, man. And I was just talking about that with an athlete that I've been working with for a couple of years here in Cleveland, who's just got an opportunity to walk on at Akron. He was another kid, came to me a couple of years ago. He was undersized. He went to a smaller school. He didn't get any opportunities. And he told me, he said, what do I need to do? And I told him basically, 2 or 3 things. And I said, you need to do that. You need to work as hard as you can every single day. And he, instead of, I see a lot of kids, I work with a lot of kids who say, okay, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about that? And I say, no, that doesn't matter. Just work harder. Just work harder. Just work hard. And he did that. And he came to me. I went and played a season. 6 months later, hit me up and he said, hey man, I did these things. I'm now 20 pounds heavier. I'm much stronger. I'm much faster. What's the next thing I need to do? I said, do this, do this, do this. Right. And he did that. And so it's not me giving him the right, giving him the tools. It's him taking ownership and knowing that what he wants to do is go play Division I football. And, 2 years later, still the hardest worker in the gym, still comes to me and asks for my advice on anything, but gets the opportunity this fall to go live his dream and play college football at Akron. And it's just because he made the decision early on that nothing was going to get him off his path. Nothing was going to bother him. Nothing was going to upset him. When people said these certain things, when people said you couldn't do it, because there are plenty of people who will say that, he was just one of those guys who decided he was going to push through. And I can't wait to see, what he does next year when they start playing college football again and people going to schools again and all that stuff. And it's just so cool. And, it's not even, and I try not even to think of it as like, like you mentioned, like a grind, because a lot of people say that, I'm just grinding. It's really the standard. I mean, it's what you have to do, right? A lot of people want to kind of self-reflect and think, wow, I did this really well. I was doing this. And it's not, it's a different perspective, right? It's, you have no choice. That's what you have to do. So it's not you're grinding, it's not, you're going out there and doing things, that people that you're reading on Instagram that people are doing and you're seeing and that you're looking up to. It's just, you've decided I have no other choice. So this is exactly what I'm going to do. And I made that decision. And you see athletes make that decision every day when they decide to be walk-ons. And so it's just awesome to see people be able to get the opportunity to live out a dream of doing that when they had basically their backs, against the wall with nobody supporting them.
Yeah, I was going to say, it must be a pretty special feeling to be able to be somewhat of a mentor to other kids and see them go through a similar path that you went through, thinking back, knowing how happy you were kind of when you were in their shoes 10, 15 years ago. That's got to be just an amazing feeling.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I got into coaching. That's how I ended up in like the strength and conditioning world, just because it helped me so much. The weight room just helped me so much kind of figure out who I was as a kid when I was trying to get bigger and faster and stronger to play at that level. And so I wanted to get into that and be able to give back. And, I feel more success when I help somebody attain their goals than I ever did when I got my goals. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a big thing. And I think that's why people get into coaching is because that's just such a good feeling to be able to help somebody, achieve what they want when everybody else is saying they can't do it.
I feel that too with a lot of the younger kids that I coach or consult with, and I'll have, sessions with them or meetings with them. And when I see them get really excited about something I talk about, a mental strategy or a mental tip or an exercise that I give them, and I see them like pull up their phone and just jot that down right away and they seem genuinely interested in it, that's the best feeling. That's better than any feeling I had playing sports, is helping other kids kind of up their game and really work on their mental game and seeing just the joy in their face about that.
Yeah. It's so you're right. It's the smile. It's the text from the kid. It's the text from the parent. It's like the little PR that they hit. It's the little things that they do that make it all worth it. You know what I mean? That make those early mornings and those late nights worth it. And it's great. Like you said, it's great to have mentors. Great to have people on your side. And sounds like you're doing an awesome job doing that. And I'm just going to try to keep being the best coach I can be to help as many people as I can.
Yeah. You mentioned a bit about your position change when you're at Indiana, going from wide receiver to safety. I know, obviously, as a walk-on, quote unquote, you'd be willing to do anything to get on the field, right? You probably play kicker or punter if you had to, or play center.
Anything they wanted, for sure.
But deep down, did you kind of have any, doubt or hesitation about that, or was it really just 100% commitment and you're okay with anything?
Kind of a funny story about that is I had gone to my coach early on as a sophomore. I'd gone to my coach and I was playing really well. We were in training camp and, spring ball carried over. I had a really good spring ball the year before, my freshman year, carried over a good camp in the fall. And then I was playing a little bit here and there, but I kept, I would go to my coach and I would say, hey man, I'm outplaying these guys. I haven't dropped the pass and, since I got to school, I know the offense inside and out. I'm helping all these starters get lined up and be in these positions they are. I said, what am I doing? What do I need to do more to actually play in games at receiver? And I had a coach tell me, you're just not strong enough. You're not big enough. And I said, all right. And I put that in the back of my head and I kept working. A year later, I broke the receiver bench record of all time at Indiana, right? It was, I think 21 reps at 225. The next winter, I hit 24 reps at 225. So that was my way of proving to this guy that I was strong enough, that I was big enough, right? And so I go in his office before spring ball that year. I said, all right, you told me a year and a half ago I wasn't big enough, I wasn't strong enough to play. I'm now the strongest receiver ever that you've ever had at this school. So, what now? Like, what's next? And the next day, they moved me to safety, right? So it was one of those things that, like, all right, like you told me this. This is the only thing I thought about for 15, 16 months. Now I switched positions. So when I got over there, he had said, the coach said, hey man, we see all the hard work you're doing. We see what you've done in the weight room. We know what you could do on the field. He said, you know what? You're probably not going to play receiver. He said, this coach has got the guys that he likes. He's got the guys he recruited. And, there's some politics involved. And I don't have any bad blood for that coach. It's just he was looking out for himself and his job. And, I can understand that the position I'm in. So this coach said, the best players will play. And he said, I want you to try to play defensive back. And I said, no problem. And he said, well, have you ever played before? And I said, yeah, I had like 2 picks in 8th grade.
Yeah.
Right. And so really I had no idea what I was doing. So I made the transition, just you put on a different color jersey. Everybody looks at you different. Everybody starts, bugging you and joking with you. And, all the receivers call you a traitor or whatever. And I was just trying to get on the field. And so I played safety for a week. We had some injuries. I went back to receiver. So then I thought that was going to be my time. We start playing the next season. We have a couple injuries at safety. They switch me back on a Monday. On a Saturday morning, so, a few days later, we're at Iowa, October 31st, 2009, on ESPN. And before the opening kickoff, our starting free safety gets hurt. And he comes up to me after the national anthem. He taps me on the shoulder, and I turn around. He's in street clothes. And he says, you're up. And I go, all right. Yeah. So I went out there, and I started against Iowa, number 4 team in the nation at the time. And on the first drive, I picked off Ricky Stanzi.
Wow.
And like after that, I had more confidence. I mean, you couldn't tell me nothing. You know what I mean?
You're on top of the world then, yeah.
Yeah, and as many doubts as I had, as soon as I did that and as soon as I made that play, I thought, all right, this is where I need to be. Yeah. And ended up having success. And I truly believe everything happens for a reason. And I had a coach watching that game who ended up reaching out to me a year later to ask if I could play arena football, and then, kind of took off from there. So I had my hesitations. I had no idea how to backpedal. I only knew how to run forward. But I also, like you said, as a walk-on, I was willing to do whatever. If they asked me to kick, if they asked me to hold, if they asked me to long snap, I would have done it. So, they asked me to make the transition. I said, no problem. And studied enough and worked with enough really, really good safeties to get decent enough to be a good player, and then ended up having some success my senior year.
Yeah, that really kind of highlights to me the importance of having that team first mentality, not letting your ego get in the way, not having that mentality of I'm a wide receiver, I'm only going to be wide receiver, having that mentality of knowing what's best for the team and filling in for different positions as it comes up, and willing to put your ego aside for the overall team goal. I think that's such a huge part of team sports, and why you see all the time that the best team on paper doesn't necessarily always win, because of the factors of the mental side of the game and team chemistry and team bonding and all that stuff.
Oh my gosh, I can't agree more with that. And where you see it a lot now is, unfortunately, there's this trend of, I say unfortunately, probably fortunately for the athletes now, but this trend of, if I'm going to commit to a school, I'm going to go to this school, and if I don't get along with somebody or a coach, or I don't play right away, I'm just going to transfer, which is such a wild idea to me, because I was never raised that way. I was raised that if I commit to something, that I'm going to do it, even if I want to quit halfway through, even if it was something that, my parents knew that I wasn't enjoying, they would make me finish it. And so it was never in my mind to see how I could kind of, place the chips in my favor to where I wanted them to be. It was just, I was going to do whatever it took. And a lot of that starts, in college football, playing scout team, right? And your starting defense is not going to be any good if your scout team offense is no good, right?
Right.
So that's kind of where it starts, just a bunch of like really hungry kids trying to get on the field, but ultimately doing the best they possibly can for the team, pretending to be players on another team, running a fake offense that you have no idea, wearing a jersey that's not even yours, that you're not comfortable in. You know what I mean? There are just so many things where it takes, and football is the ultimate team sport. I truly believe that you're only as strong as your weakest link, and all those other, kind of cliches that people say, but you're absolutely right. I think the team first mentality is the only mentality you could have, because you see a lot of selfish guys kind of work their way out. And a lot of times the athletes with staying power and people who have a lot of success are team first guys.
Yeah. You mentioned going to the AFL Arena Football League. It's pretty obvious the physical differences between gridiron football or standard American football and arena football. But was there any mental differences that you had to overcome as an athlete, playing both sides of that football game, kind of? Because it's got to be a bit different as an athlete. It seemed like it's a bit more kind of high intensity, and there's a bit more high hits in the Arena Football League because it's a smaller field.
Yeah. It really is kind of the most, the most aggressive form of the sport, I guess I could say. We're basically trapped in this hockey rink, and, everybody's on top of each other. You only have 50 yards to run. There's 8 players on the field. There's a lot of motion. There's a lot of scoring. There's a lot of action, and the fans are right next to you. You know what I mean? Like, the footballs go into the crowd all the time. Fans are right there all the time. I think the biggest transition for me was just understanding that it is football. If you enjoy football and you're a football fan and you watch arena football, you can understand it. Touchdowns are still 6 points, extra. Field goals are 3 points, extra points are 1 point. It's like still has kind of the bones of football. But it really is a totally different sport. It's different schemes. It's so fast. It's so much more physical. I remember playing early on, I used to catch passes by the sideline kind of falling out of bounds. Well, I would catch a pass in the Arena Football League, bounce off the wall, and have a 285-pound linebacker running as fast as he can to hit me right back into that wall that I just rebounded off of, right? Which I remember thinking, well, this is the worst. I'll never survive this thing.
This is bumper cars and football is tied into one.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're not out of bounds until somebody hits you out of bounds. You're getting hit every play. I was in so much more pain after arena football games than I ever was the outdoor game. I think the biggest difference was really just we grow up playing on a 100-yard field with 11 men on the field where, by the time you've played for 3 or 4 seasons, you understand for the most part, most of the game. The Arena Football League game is completely different. You as a receiver, we get an opportunity to run 15 yards before the snap as fast as we can to get an advantage because that gives the offense an advantage. It's an offensive game. Fans love touchdowns. So you score 7 points, you score 6 touchdowns a game, you're going to have a lot of fans, cheering for you as an individual and your team. The biggest thing was just getting used to the dimensions. I remember my first couple practices running these go routes. I would stop early, or I would slide to catch passes, and I would kind of look to see how close I was to the wall, and I still had 15 yards to go. It was one of those things I just couldn't get my bearings on it. A lot of outdoor football is you have to do this, you have to do this. Arena football is more, just kind of get here at this time, and if the timing works out, you'll have success. So it really is a lot to learn. And I really do think it took me, 4 or 5 years of playing behind some really, really good Arena Football League receivers and professional receivers. In any league, these guys could have played anywhere, to fully have a grasp of what was happening and what was going on. But then once you kind of get it, once you figure it out, you're able to really have a lot of success. And so I was fortunate. I was in a good place where after kind of my 4th year, I got an opportunity to play. I had a quarterback who we had really good chemistry, and then I had a season where we were able to set a ton of records in Cleveland, and kind of from there was able to keep it rolling, and to kind of continue success from there. But it was hard. It was a big learning curve. It was something totally different. It was something that, I wanted to quit, that I didn't want to spend a ton of time in, because it was frustrating to try to figure it all out. But ultimately, the best decision I ever made was to play arena football, because, every great experience I've had in the last decade has been due to arena football or due to people that I've met playing arena football. So it was just such a great experience, and I have so many awesome memories from it.
You mentioned potentially wanting to quit or throw in the towel. When those thoughts start popping into your head, is that something that you try and deal with by yourself? Or again, we talked a bit about, the importance of friends and family and a strong support system. Is that when they really played a role?
Yeah, man. So I'll tell you, the time that I remember, I flipped a little bit. And it was after a couple seasons of playing arena football. I was playing for, a coach who I didn't really fit with his system. And I had some frustrations because I'd play really well at practice and wouldn't get opportunities in the games. And, I would have to, I was being told a lot of things and not given many opportunities. And all I wanted was an opportunity. I wasn't asking for even to get the ball. I just wanted an opportunity to get on the field. So I was able to show what I could do. And I've really actually only told this story one time before, on a podcast a couple of years ago. I did. But I was starting my 4th or 5th season, somewhere in there. I think my 5th season. And, like I mentioned earlier, I was always playing so angry. I was so mad all the time. And I wanted to prove these coaches wrong. I wanted to tell this guy who said I wasn't strong enough that I am strong enough. I wanted to tell all those kids who said I couldn't play in the Big Ten that I was good enough. I was just so mad all the time. And I don't mean in my personal life. I've always been positive and, outgoing and that, so I wasn't affected there. But on the field, I was just so angry. I remember about 5 years in, I was in a similar situation. I was the backup, and I was playing a little more, but I didn't have a ton of success. And before a game, I was trying to get in that mindset that, like, all right, whoever lines up against me, I feel bad for them. You know what I mean? Because I'm going to hurt them, or I'm going to do whatever I can do to get. And I don't mean, actually do something cheap, but I mean, I was willing to do whatever it took. Right. And I remember my family walked in, and my nephew at the time was 5. And I remember him overall, we probably had 4,000 or 5,000 people at the game so far. It was just in warmups. And I heard my nephew scream my name. And I looked up there, and just to see him smiling, sitting up there in the stands, looking down at his uncle play the sport that he loved, the living his absolute dream of playing professional football, I realized at that moment that it was no longer about me. And it wasn't about me proving this guy wrong or me doing what I can do to show this guy that I could do it. It was about having gratitude and being grateful for the position I was in. Mm-hmm. So when it came to making the decision, sorry, I got a phone call there.
No worries.
So when it came to me making the decision if I wanted to quit, I had no option, because I thought about the conversation that I would have ultimately with my nephew when he grew up, who would say, if it was something all along the lines of, Uncle C, I want to do this, or do you think I can do this? Who would I be if I quit doing what I love to do just because other people told me I couldn't do it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was one of those moments where I thought, I'm going to have a conversation with this kid eventually when he's going to come to me because he is in a similar situation that he's in, or that I was in. Oh, this guy says I can't do it. Should I just quit? I would be a hypocrite if I said, oh no, you can do anything. Go live your dreams.
Yeah.
Nobody can because I would have bailed as soon as something got hard. So as soon as I made that decision that it was no longer about me, it changed my whole life. It changed my whole perspective. I started enjoying what I was doing. I started, focusing on my breath and focusing on the moment and meditating more and really just enjoying every single second of being in pads and being on the field. And whether it be running suicides at the end of practice in full pads, after a 3.5 hour practice, I enjoyed those things because I remember telling myself that this is a part of it. This is a part of the process. I've got to go through this, and nothing worth working for is ever easy. And ultimately in August, this most recent August, when we won the world championship, the 32nd Arena Football League world championship, everything kind of came together. All those conversations that I had with coaches who told me I couldn't do it, all the times in the weight room, that I struggled to get a rep at a heavy weight, all the times where I, was talking to a girl and she said, oh, you should stop playing, you're not good. Any time those things, it all made it worth it. Yeah. Because I didn't quit, and now I'm able to have this story to be able to share with people, and ultimately that I'm able to share with now my nephews and my niece that they can get through hard times and they can overcome anything because I'm a living, I am living that actual story. And I was able to do it. So, once I made that switch, there was no choice. I wouldn't quit, and I wasn't going to quit. And that was kind of, the long-winded story about it. But that really, once I had that kind of realization, it changed my life. And now I just take that kind of into my everyday routines.
Yeah, that really speaks to me a bit about the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Seemed like before that switch, you might have been a bit more extrinsically motivated, like you're more motivated about proving other people wrong and what other people thought about you. Whereas you made that switch to being intrinsically motivated, where you did things because you genuinely enjoyed them and that motivation came from within. I mean, there's countless books and articles and journal reviews out there that talk about how athletes that are intrinsically motivated last longer in professional sports and they burn out less frequently than those that are extrinsically motivated.
Oh, and it's so true. I mean, we asked the question too at our gym now. A coach and I asked, and it was last year kind of we started asking our athletes this. After these tough workouts, we would say, are you motivated or are you driven? Right? And it's the same thing, extrinsic or intrinsic. Like, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it? Are you doing the workout so you can post it on Instagram and see how many likes you can get? Because if you are, you ain't going to get very far, right? And I think early on, that's what I wanted. I wanted people to say, oh man, I remember CT in high school. Now he's playing professional football. That's so cool. And I wanted people to see the highlights, and I wanted people to, send me texts after the games. And I used to love when people would call me, oh my gosh, dude, I just saw you on ESPN. I saw you on the top 10. That was so cool. And I got so much pride and love, self-love from that, which is so weird because it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it was like none of that mattered. So when you realize an athlete is not motivated by likes or motivated by, being able to make enough money to get a fancy car or a nice house, or motivated by, VIP status at the bars, right? It's like when people are really driven, that's what wakes them up in the morning and gets them going and gets them to the gym when nobody else is there. And when they're deciding between a protein shake and ice cream, it's no longer a decision, right? It's like that's what it takes. Like you said, extrinsic, intrinsic, driven or motivated. And I think that's a question that every athlete truly needs to self-reflect on and ask themselves, why am I doing this? Yeah. Like, what am I doing this for? Because if you're getting out of bed so you can look at Instagram and see how many likes you got. That's not going to continue to get you out of bed, because to get where you want to go, you're not going to get there in 6 months. You're not going to get there in a year. It's going to take 10, 12, 15 years of really hard work. And so that's exactly what it was. It flipped from, how cool does this look? What's this look like on social media? How's this sound when I'm talking to people, when I'm catching up, at high school reunions, to I genuinely want to prove to my niece and nephews that things like this are possible. And it was a whole different game.
That's one of those lessons that I feel like, I always talk about how sports and personal life blend in, and the lessons you learn in one blend over into the other. That really seems like a life lesson that people learn through sports is, if you do things for the money, the fame, the likes of social media, it's going to burn out. It could be a job. It could be a relationship you have. It could be anything you do in life. If you're in it for the wrong reasons, it's not going to last. And you should really try and focus as much as your life as you can on things that you like genuinely enjoy and love doing, because that's where the true passion comes from. And that will allow you to work hard as you need to be successful at it.
Yeah, Adam, I can't agree with that more. And especially, you're doing exactly that, right? It's not like you're doing these podcasts and then, having these conversations and then doing something completely different, right?
Right.
It's like, I've scrolled through your page and I see the people you're talking to. And to me, it seems like you genuinely want to have good conversations with good human beings, right? Who have things to say that can help further people in their careers, no matter what that is. And you're totally right. I think eventually the money will come. If you care about something enough, you'll figure out how to make money doing it. But if that's the driving factor, we've seen plenty of high level athletes who obviously are just in it for certain things, the look and the fame and the, and the money and the card, which is all awesome. I imagine. I don't have any of it, but I imagine it would be awesome. But those guys don't tend to last. It's the people like the Tom Brady's who are in it for 30 years and at the top of their game, who show you that it is the relationships you make, it's the people you surround yourself with, and it's how hard you're willing to work that will ultimately be the reason for your success.
Yeah. Some, unfortunate news of the AFL going bankrupt not too long ago. Reflecting back, I guess, what are just your whole emotions and thoughts behind that? I'm not sure if you're already at a point in your career when you were thinking about stepping away. I'm not sure if this changed your plans in football going forward. I guess reflect on just that whole situation and what it means for your football career going forward.
Yeah, man. The AFL claiming bankruptcy was out of nowhere. We had just won the championship a couple months before. I found out the day before Thanksgiving, so that would have been November. We won the championship August 11th. So just a couple months before that, we had kind of went on what we called like a little media tour for the next couple weeks. And I stayed out in Albany for a couple weeks, and every radio station, it's, are you coming back? We want you back. Can we bring this team back to, build another championship? How cool would back-to-back championships be, and all this. And I was just trying to really enjoy that team and enjoy that time with those guys. So I wasn't really thinking about the future, but one thing that I'd always done, and again, if it weren't for my parents, if it weren't for my sister kind of guiding me to these places, I probably would have been totally different. But I'd always try to give myself and set myself up and give myself a good place and a good position to be in every off season. And so I got into the strength and conditioning world 8 years ago or so, and always was, able to kind of, I don't even want to say, fall back on that, because it's never how that felt. I never approached it like a plan B. But I knew eventually football would end.
Yeah.
I just thought it would be under my own terms. And that was probably the toughest part, was that when I took those pads off, I didn't think about it being the last time that the pads came off. I was, in that locker room after the celebration, really aware that this is the last time I'm going to be with these guys. So that's one thing that I'm thankful for, that I got that opportunity to be with some of my best friends that I've ever made there in that locker room to win a championship with. And I knew I would get back into strength and conditioning. But when we got that call on, the day before Thanksgiving of this past year, I just immediately started feeling bad for all the people who came and supported our team when I was in Albany, and supported our team when we were in Cleveland, because they're the reason we were able to have jobs. The fans were the reason. Them buying tickets and deciding on a Friday that they wanted to go to a Cleveland Gladiator game instead of a Cleveland Indian game is the reason that I was able to, have a job and have success and have the opportunity to play professional football. So I just felt bad for all the people that I'd met along the way who had given so much of themselves to us as players and given so much of themselves to the league. So that's what hurt me the most, is that I felt for every single fan, every single person who'd ever purchased a ticket, every single person who'd ever listened to, a radio show with one of us on it, every reporter who'd ever asked us to be on TV, every podcast host who asked us to be on a podcast. That's what I felt the most love for, because they don't deserve, something that has a little piece of their heart to be taken away from them like that. And I still feel for them. And I still have, friends that started as fans that are now family who I talk to, on a weekly basis. And still, I always think about, I feel so bad that they, can't bring their grandkids to games anymore, or can't bring, people who have kids who I now work with who grew up going to Gladiators games, that they can't this summer go to a Gladiator game. So I was okay with it, again, because I knew it would end. I played till I was 32, which is a lot longer than a lot of people play. And I played at a high level for a long time. So I was okay with that. I haven't really had time to sit and think about what it's like not playing right now, because nobody's playing, right? So it's one of those things that's a little different. I'm sure it would be different if people were playing right now. But I'm super happy with where I'm at. And I'm just so blessed for the opportunity to be able to play professional football for the last 9 years, because again, I always say it's just something that I never would have expected I would do. And I never would have thought that I would have had any success doing it. So just grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah. What you kind of said there reminded me that it's bigger than, like, football is bigger than sports, right? It's about life. Like, for these people, this is their entertainment. This is like their livelihood, like the jobs, the fans, like they devote their lives to this sport and watching the sport, cheering on the sport, getting to know the sport. And really, I think hits home for a lot of people as you go into depth there about the number of people that a bankruptcy of a league affects: the fans, the podcast hosts, the interviewers, everybody. It's just really kind of to go to show, it's bigger than sports. Football it's about life.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I know that, again, my best friends, the people who I'm the closest with, the people I love the most, I met playing arena football, and it's just a bummer that people don't get that opportunity moving forward. People don't get to have those experiences that I had, and ultimately might not get to meet the people that I got the opportunity to meet because the league's not around. But it sounds like there are more opportunities for players out there, young players who played for a year, maybe or two in the Arena Football League. It sounds like they've got other opportunities, and so that'll be cool, and that'll be good to see. And I'll stay up on all those, and I imagine I'll get involved still with indoor football eventually. I just love the sport so much that I imagine I'll get into it eventually. But for now, I'm just kind of excited for the next phase in life to see where everything goes.
That's good. Like you said, having that, you didn't want to necessarily call it a fallback plan, but getting acclimated with strength and conditioning and getting coaching certificates or whatever was involved. Yeah. It's not so much being a fallback plan. It's just thinking about the future and, coming to terms with reality and the inevitable that there's life after football. So I'm really glad to hear that you're kind of really at peace with where things are in your career right now. Cause I know for a lot of athletes, they probably wouldn't have that same mindset. It hits harder for some other than others. So it's good to hear. Last thing, I have a little game I like to play in this podcast here.
Okay.
I have a collection of sports psychology quotes. I just expanded them actually to, I have 17 here. So I'll get you to pick a number between 1 and 17, and I'll read you the quote and then just reflect on it a bit, what it means to you and your career and all that jazz.
Okay. I love that. So I got 3 numbers in mind. My most recent number was 11. My number all the years before were 17. But growing up, my favorite number because of Allen Iverson was number 3. So I'm gonna choose number 3 because my guy AI.
This is a popular quote here in the podcast. This is from Lou Holtz, legendary Notre Dame football coach.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it."
Amen. Yeah. He probably, I bet Lou has 10 of those 17 quotes. Yeah. It's control the controllables is something that I was told very early on in college. Again, when I would be so mad. I would be so upset about things. And I had a buddy who would say, why are you getting mad about something that you can't even control? Right? You can control your mindset. You can control how you react. So do that to the best of your ability. Right. And so Lou saying that all he's saying is know ultimately the reason you're doing what you're doing and make sure every decision is going towards that goal. And then it's easy to recognize any decision you make that veers off that path, that was the incorrect decision. No matter what happens around you, and life is crazy right now and the world is crazy right now, but as long as people continue to go down the path that they want to find their ultimate goal and to get to where they want to go, I think people will continue to be okay with that. And that's I think ultimately what Lou was trying to say is, don't let all this other BS and all this other stuff going on affect you. Control what you can control, react accordingly, and stay on the path.
Yeah, I mean, this time is a perfect time to kind of reflect on that quote, because you can think of, a regular athlete, they're used to being in the gym right now. I mean, right now, gym's starting to open, but think about a month ago, for example, they maybe their team centers doing performance training, whatever. And it's like, they might complain, oh, I don't have the same access to equipment. Like, I don't feel like I can work on my game. And it's really the question of, so what? Like, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Like, there's still things you can do at home. There's still film you can study. There's still sports psychology books you can read about and gain some tips that way. There's endless opportunities to work on your craft. And it's really about 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. And a kind of an answer that comes up a lot when I hear you say things like that is, it doesn't matter. Like, people don't care. Oh, I would do this, but I don't have the equipment. Well, it doesn't matter, right? Because you're competing against somebody, if we're staying in the sports realm, who might have that. So what are you going to do? He's not going to feel bad if you line up across from a defensive back and say, hey man, before I run this route, I just want to let you know that when I was quarantined, I only had one kettlebell. I didn't have a barbell. So just go. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. He doesn't care. Right. Yeah. And so I think that's something that you hear kind of, I was hearing, especially as a coach early on, well, I don't have this. What am I going to do without a gym? It doesn't matter. You have to do something. You've got to figure it out, because people aren't just going to stop because they feel bad for you. And especially when it comes to, playing sports at such a level where it is your livelihood and it's what puts food on the table for you and your family. And it's so you can sleep comfortably in shelter. And so you have a vehicle to drive to and from practice. Like, it doesn't matter, because people are fighting just as hard for that. Yeah. So I don't care if you didn't have weights, and I don't care if you were tired, and I don't care if you went out the night before, right? Because it doesn't matter. You've got to figure out a way as an athlete, if you want it enough, if you're intrinsically motivated enough, if you're driven enough, to go out and get what you want.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Let's do another quick quote here. Do you have another number between 1 and 17?
Yes. Let's do 11, because we've spent some time talking about the Albany Empire. Yeah.
All right. 11. This is pretty in line with what the podcast is about. This is from Venus Williams, legendary tennis player, of course. She said, sports are mostly mental. You win or lose the match before you even go out there.
Yeah. That's so good. Michael Jordan was just quoted saying, and I don't mean to get back to this quote, but Michael Jordan was just quoted in the Last Dance saying, they said, are you worried about, hitting these shots when you get the ball at the end of the game? And he says, why would I be worried about missing a shot I haven't even taken yet?
Right.
Right. And it's one of those things that you're out there on the field, you're out there on the turf, you're out there on the court with, there are going to be good athletes you're playing against, right? What can we do? And I started doing mental performance because I had the same kind of self-reflection years. What can we do to give ourselves an advantage? Well, if we're both the same about height, we're both the same about strength, we're both athletic, you and your competitor, what can you do to get a big advantage. And all of that is up here in your head, in between your ears. And it's such a game changer when somebody commits to making and tell themselves that, all right, not only am I going to develop my physical game, but I'm going to develop my mental game as well. And making that decision and making the dedication to that changes an athlete's game. I mean, 10-fold, 50-fold, 100-fold. Yeah. I know when I started it, I barely had any professional catches. When I got into the mental performance stuff, and I worked with a coach pretty consistently for 2 years, who now is a very, very close friend of mine. He and his dad are both in the industry and helped me through it, helped me, get along there. I left being one of the franchise leading receivers. And I don't know if it was because I dedicated myself to the mental side of the game, but I know it didn't hurt, right? And I know I had a different perspective going into every game, and I went into it already knowing that I've won because I've done it in my head so many times that there was no way I was going to lose. And she's so right with that. You just look at some of the athletes who preach mental performance. The Williams sisters are one. I know LeBron James talks about it a lot. You hear interviews with Steph Curry talking about it. Like the elite of the elite athletes, I mean, we just talked about Michael Jordan, are talking about how important the mental game is. Yeah. So if this is the first time as an athlete you're hearing this on this podcast, it's time to start. If it's the 50th time that you're hearing it, you haven't started, there's a reason you keep hearing it over and over again. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And now's the time to start. And I don't think it stops at athletes, right? I think it stops if you want to be the best at anything you're doing, no matter what your profession is. I think you've got to be mentally strong, and you've got to, have a mindset and a different approach that is not only what you're doing physically, but also what's going on in your brain, because the mind is a powerful thing.
There's so many articles and books I read where they say that training your mind is just as effective as training your body when it comes to sports. The amount of gain you can get from, in your performance from training your mind is just as it is from bench pressing or doing squats or whatever. So that was really one of the motivations to me of starting this podcast, is really to make this discussion more mainstream, because there's a lot of talk on the media and everything about the physical side of sports and like drills and stuff like that, plays, but not so much on the mental side of visualization or confidence or dealing with adversity and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of my favorite quotes here that I have collected here, of course, that you either win or lose the match before you get out there. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the reason we don't hear about it is because it's not sexy. Because it won't get likes, and you can't, it's hard, to paint a picture of what a mental training session looks like if you're talking to an athlete. And I found the best times are just little cues here and there when somebody will say, you go sit under a bench press and somebody will say, something like, hey, I'm going for 5, but I'll probably only get 3. Yeah. It's one of those things like, well, now you'll only get 3, like one of those, it's just little things that to sprinkle here and there, because it's not easy to grasp the idea of mental training. What do I just got to get on my phone and I got to listen to this dude talk to me? And you know what I mean? It's like, it's a hard idea, but it really is when you dedicate yourself to it. It is such a game changer and such a different approach that, I mean, again, just a mental perspective, a mental shift for me changed my entire career and my entire life. Yeah. So if that's not enough to get somebody started working on the mental side of the game, I don't know what is. And if I could change one thing probably about my career, is that I would have got into the mental side of sports much earlier. Getting in at 25, 26, not the best time. It's better than 30, but it's not as good as getting in at, 15 and 16. So I push athletes who are that age to get into that right now, because it is such a game changer.
For sure. Last thing here before you wrap up, I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Sure.
Been in quarantine for a bit now. Things are trying to open up, but I got to imagine there's been some shows you've binge watching. So what have you had on your TV lately?
Yeah. So gosh, man, embarrassingly, Married at First Sight. I cannot stop watching. My girlfriend got me into that a couple months ago, and I'm just digesting Married at First Sight on Hulu. Sons of Anarchy I got into a little bit, which I've really enjoyed. And The Office. The Office is one that I've been trying to watch, and
You haven't watched The Office before?
No, and I'm one of those I'm very late on it. But I'm 7 seasons in now, and I just have it in the background, and I believe the best written show.
Oh yeah,
of all time.
Yeah.
And so those 3 have been kind of taken to consume too much of my time recently.
Nice. You have any quarantine snacks or lockdown snacks that have developed over the past couple months?
Yeah, man. So I started really enjoying pretzel thins with peanut butter.
Okay.
But they have to be everything pretzel thins.
Gotcha.
And I mean, they're always stocked, and I mean, it's just something that I just devour. So yeah, that's my favorite quarantine stack: pretzel thins and peanut butter. Yeah.
I've never had pretzel thins and I like them both separately. I haven't had them together.
Right. You have to give them a shot. I mean, they're wonderful.
Yeah. Growing up, did you have a favorite football team that you looked up to, or a favorite player in that category?
Yeah, so I love the Colts. Being an Indianapolis kid. But I really like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for some reason. I think
they had really nice jerseys back then.
Yeah, I think the jerseys were cool. And so a guy I really watched all the time in the NFL was Warrick Dunn.
Oh yeah.
You know, just undersized running back from Florida State. Just made plays anywhere he needed to. He was one of those 4 down guys. You know, you don't see a ton of them now, but just one of those like real gritty players. And then he'd come off the field and, you know, he would build houses for the homeless, and he would do things, and it was just so cool. And I thought he was one of the coolest guys on the planet. So Warrick Dunn in the Tampa Bay Bucks, outside of, you know, kind of the Jim Harbaugh Indianapolis Colts back in the day. The Bucks were my team.
Last one here. You've gone up against a lot of DBs, safeties, linebackers, depending on the position you're playing, everything. Are there any guys that really stick out that gave you a tough time, that matchup you might have, you know, really looked forward to in a weird way?
Yes. Okay. So this guy comes to mind often when this question comes up, and I'm thinking if there's anybody else, but this guy is really a guy who always made me play my best football. Mm-hmm. And if I had one bad play the whole game, I would hear about it from till the end of that game, till 6 weeks later, until the next time we played him. And the guy was always pushing me, and always making, you know, he turned me into ultimately the receiver who I ended up becoming. This guy, James Romaine, played for the Philadelphia Soul. He played for a long time. One of the best defensive backs I'd ever played against, if not the best. Mm-hmm. And then actually had an opportunity to be on his team over in China, played in the Chinese Arena Football League for a season, and their first ever league. And he was on my team, and it was the same thing every day at practice. I mean, going like we were playing for 2 completely different teams. But he was the only guy I feel like I ever had a problem with, just because he played the position so differently. I mean, he was always studying film, always. And he could read, you know, depending on where you inserted in your motion, he could read depending on how many steps you were taking or where you broke. I mean, he always gave us a tough time. Saying that, I had multiple games where I had 3 and 4 touchdowns against him. So I don't want him to listen to this and think that, you know, he was a huge problem for me, but he definitely made me raise my game to play my best, because I knew if I took a play off, he was going to be in my ear about it. And I that's the last thing I wanted.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I think Malachi said the exact same guy when I interviewed him. I think he said James Romaine as well. If he was on the Philadelphia Soul this past year, then that's definitely the same guy.
Yes, that's exactly who it is. Okay. Played middleman. He played a different position when another one of the best defensive players to ever play that position, that middle safety in the Arena Football League, which is, I mean, one of the toughest positions in sports. But he ended up kind of getting taught by that guy, and as soon as he went into the position, I mean, he was multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year. He was multiple-time Defensive Back of the Year. He had a lot of accolades. But again, same thing with Malachi. You know, he was able to score on him a ton. He was able to make a ton of plays, but he was really one of the only guys who, you know, you kind of look at you know, interceptions for defensive backs, but he was much more than just a guy to pick off pick off passes. He would have pass breakups, and he would make the quarterback change his reads, change the trajectory of his throws. I mean, such an awesome player. I feel like I've given him too many props right now on this talk. I mean,
I'll send them out. Don't worry, I'll cut some out.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I love the guy to death. He's taught me a lot about myself, a lot about my game, and we still talk all the time. And great dude. But yeah, I mean, he's one of the toughest players I've ever played against.
And it's those matchups where you feel like they make you better. Those are the ones you look forward to. It's almost like one thing that came to my mind. I'm going to try not to throw too much shade here, but I'm a Buckeyes fan. So the Michigan Wolverine rivalry, I mean, it doesn't have the same jazz to it as it did in years past because Michigan's a bit, step lower right now than Ohio State. But when they're 1 versus 2, that's a much more exciting game to go watch or to see on TV.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's 1 versus unranked.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's a kind of a common understanding, you know what I mean, between the two teams. As much as they dislike each other, they know that that's going to be the best players they play against. That's going to be the best game they play. And it really brings the best out of athletes. I mean, Santana Moss said it years ago. I don't know if you were a Santana Moss fan when he was at Miami, again, years ago, but he said big time players step up in big games. And that's exactly what happens. I mean, you'll see the best players play the best on the biggest stages against the best teams. And that, as a fan, is, I mean, all you want to see.
That's why we watch
best in the game. Yes, exactly right. That's why you watch it. That's why that's why you wanted to watch the 98 Bulls against my Reggie Miller Indiana Pacers. You know what I mean? That's why you still watch LeBron and Giannis go at it. It's because you want to see the best in their game and you want to see them taken to the next level just because of the competition. I mean, it's really an awesome thing to watch.
100%. That's why sports it's so unpredictable and it's just so cool. Sports. I mean, I've been a sports fan my whole life and I couldn't imagine my life without it.
No. I mean, it is really crazy. Hopefully, you know what I mean? Hopefully the younger, kind of sports fans are able to see what we saw growing up, because it's kind of a weird time with sports, but hopefully it gets back rolling and, we get heroes and we get people to look up to again and games to watch and teams to support. Because, that's what makes the summer is baseball. And you know what I mean? And we know when the NBA All-Star break is, and we know when the Super Bowl is, and it's like, it brings family together. It brings people together. It brings people of, you know what I mean, from all across the world together just to support a team. And that's what's so awesome about sports.
Listen, man, I think we've topped an hour here. I mean, time flies when you're having fun, but
man. Yeah.
I appreciate you sitting down and kind of going through your career and how the mental side played a role in it. And again, I'm really happy to hear that you're kind of at a good place right now mentally with not being so much in football, but taking a step back and coaching and all that jazz. That's really cool to see.
Yeah, thank you.
I wish you the best of luck with all that stuff going forward and continue to wish your friends and family, safe health and everything as this coronavirus hopefully wraps up pretty soon. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. Love talking to good people. And also continue to support the podcast from here on out. Now that I know you, now that I know you're a guitar fan and a tennis player and an NSYNC fan, I got you. Anything you need, man, let me know. But
I got to stop. I've been telling myself I got to stop playing out so many podcast episodes because it's not letting me play guitar as much as I want. I've learned I want to throw up on Instagram that I haven't had the time to record or anything. So I'm trying to balance everything, but first world problems, I guess that is.
Yeah. You're right, man. That's such a cool skill to have, just to be able to do that. And you can, play guitar and podcast and do, all these other things. So that's great, man. Multi-dimensional. Keep
trying my best.
You're awesome at this, man. And I know people appreciate what you're doing.
Awesome. I appreciate that, man. And again, appreciate your time a lot and we'll be in touch soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Adam. Great talking to you, bro.
Take care, man.
You too.